This one is dedicated to each and every one of you who appreciate a great glass of wine. You know what I mean?
It's Monday. Let's raise a glass to the beginning of another week. It's time to unscrew, uncork, or saber a bottle. And let's begin exploring the wine glass. The Thursday before Memorial Day is known as International or World Chardonnay Day. Chardonnay is the base for many white wine blends. In this episode, I sit down with Chris Eberle, winemaker for Eberle Winery in Paso Robles, to discuss all things Chardonnay. We cover a lot of topics, including the concept that Chardonnay is a neutral grape, how many diverse profiles the grape variety offers, the infamous ABC people of the world, and of course we sample some Eberle Chardonnay. We sipped through their 2023 Everyday and Reserve Chardonnay. While you are listening, it would be so incredible if you could take 1 minute to subscribe, rate, and review. It takes only a few seconds of your time but means so much to the show. The next best way to support Exploring the Wine Glass is to tell your friends. If you enjoy the podcast, your wine-loving friends will too. Finally, don't forget to head to the website, exploringthewineglass.com, to read the blog, sign up for the newsletter, and keep up on all of the happenings. Slancha.
Give me the wine, every time.
Hey everybody, I'm Lori Budd, a UC Davis winemaking program, Spanish wine scholar, sommelier service, champagne and Côte d'Aron specialist, and a WSET Level 2 graduate. You can find Exploring the Wine Glass on all the socials, as well as your favorite podcast catchers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to swipe, subscribe, rate, and review. Stay in the know about all things wine by visiting my website, exploringthewineglass.com. I promise I'll never tell you what to drink, but I'll always share what's in my glass.
So you and I can fill the vine.
Hey everybody, it is almost Chardonnay Day. It is being celebrated this year, May 23rd. It is the Thursday before Memorial Day. It is one of those holidays that I hate because it always rotates. I like dates that are specific. But this year it is May 23rd, and I am here sitting outside looking at some incredible vines at Eberle in Paso Robles, and I'm sitting down with Chris Eberle. And if you are a fan of the podcast, you know he's been on this podcast a few times before. He really is one of my favorite people here in Paso. So welcome.
Good morning.
How are we doing?
Great.
Okay. And
a little overcast today, but sun should come out at some point.
It will all burn off. That's what always happens,
yeah.
Right? So before we even get into Chardonnay Day, Tahiti.
It was terrible. It was truly terrible experience. I wouldn't recommend it. Don't go back. I won't go back. No, we do. My wife and I host an Eberle wine cruise once a year, and we just got back from Tahiti. We had about 65 Eberle guests, and it was amazing. It was amazing. Clear water, beautiful fish. You get to see sharks swimming around you and manta rays or stingrays. Yeah, it was awesome. Great experience. Great food. Yeah.
And the next one is, in case anybody is interested in heading over to the Eberle Winery website to find out how to get on the next one, what is that?
The next one is July something. The first part of July, and it's Rome to Venice, and it'll be more centered around wine and the history of wine, and going through Italy, and we make stops in Croatia, and we start in Rome and we end in Venice, and I think it's 10 or 11 days, but yeah, it should be a lot of fun. This will be my third one, and Gary's done 50 of them.
Oh my gosh.
He's done 50, 5 in Tahiti, so you can tell that he likes that place. But yeah, he's done 50, and it was 3 years ago, just after COVID. He said, Chris, I don't want to do these cruises anymore. I'm done traveling. And so, yeah, it's part of my job now.
Give you this burden.
This burden. And yeah, it's been fun.
All right. So we are going to talk about Chardonnay. And the first thing is Chardonnay is often thought of as a neutral grape. Why do you think that is so, and do you agree with that concept?
I do and I don't. If Chardonnay is overcropped, it's very neutral. And I've experienced that out at Eberle. So you really have to work with it once it comes into the winery to make it not so neutral, a little more interesting. But no, I mean, Chardonnay is the most widely planted, I think, grape overall.
Yeah, I think so.
And so there's so many styles, so many variations of Chardonnay that I think it gets a bad rap because you can find really bad Chardonnays and then you find really great Chardonnays. And I think it's a matter of just finding, first of all, the style that you like and also the region that you like.
Right. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
And so one of those styles is the big old butter bomb. Okay. Now I will full out say it, not my style.
Really? I pictured you of a big butter. I don't want to say Rombauer, but when you think buttery Chardonnay, you think Rombauer.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
and they have made quite a good living.
Oh, absolutely.
Making that.
Absolutely. No, I think it doesn't matter what style you like. If you find you love that buttery big style, fantastic.
Right.
Drink it. Not for me either. I can appreciate it,
Right.
at a certain level, but I've also heard Rombauer has changed the style a little bit. They've gone a little less buttery, a little less oaky.
Really?
That's what I heard. I haven't tried it for a while.
Well, they just got sold too, didn't they?
Right,
so
maybe
I think
they've changed up some things. But like you said, they made a good living on that style. But we don't make that style. We make more, I don't know, because we only typically make one Chardonnay, I kind of play the middle. So maybe just a tiny bit, little hints of that buttery, oaky, but then also some of that stainless steel minerality, more lean. So we kind of play the middle road because I have to try and hit everyone's taste buds.
Right, you don't want to go in very far in either direction and turn a larger portion of people off.
Exactly. I got to play it safe.
Okay. And so we'll geek out a little bit to start off with. So how do we get that butteriness into that Chardonnay? What is happening there?
So typically, there's a couple different ways you can go. You can go picking a little bit earlier, so you're going to have more malic acid in the wine. You can pick later, which will give you more fruit and texture. But really what it comes down to is the secondary fermentation, which is malolactic. So malic acid conversion to lactic, which is a softer acid, and then just time on lees and batonnage, lee stirring. So you're building texture with the batonnage, and you get that butteriness from the secondary fermentation.
That diacetyl.
And it really comes down to also, there's many producers that don't use bacteria to initiate the secondary fermentation. We do, because I want a little bit cleaner fermentation that I know is either going to finish or stop when I want it to. And so it's very important to choose the right bacteria when you're trying to go for this style.
Okay. And so this is a little, nail on the board, chalkboard to me, that it's called malolactic fermentation, because technically it's not a fermentation.
It's not a fermentation, yeah. Yeah, exactly.
But it is, I don't know why they call it that, but...
the bacteria eat the malic and they poop out lactic.
Right. So kind of, I guess, the same kind of concept, but not fermentation. And being the microbiologist, it bothers me that they call it.
What would you call it?
I don't know, but now for fermentation is the yeast. It's right.
It's an anaerobic
a fungus. It's an anaerobic thing, right? So I don't know. I guess there is no better term for it, but
you're the biologist. I just make it. I don't know.
It's a bacteria, not a fungus, right? So it's kind of but I guess there is no other better name for it. But I think it's a confusing concept to people.
It is. Yeah.
And it's not like fermentation itself is an easy concept for most people to really grasp, right?
Yeah, but it's a pretty simple process, but both of them are.
Right.
Just one's bacteria and one's fungus.
Yeah. Right, yeah. And I say that all the time, just it poops out, because that really is what it is.
It's the easiest way to explain it.
And that's, I talk about when we have those higher alcohols and we are going through the fermentation, that the yeast actually are pooping out the alcohol and it's toxic to them and they end up killing themselves off
I think we're saying pooping too much.
Yeah, I know. That is true. That is true. All right, back to Chardonnay. Back to Chardonnay. So DNA, again, I absolutely love the science aspect of it. DNA, Chardonnay's parents have been proven to be Pinot and Goy Blanc, which, I don't know. Have you ever dealt with Goy Blanc?
Absolutely
I don't even know if I'm saying it correctly.
Like you just said it, and I was like, oh, that's how you say it. Okay, cool.
No,
I have not worked with it other than just reading about it. Never heard of it.
Yeah, never heard of it. Never seen it.
Never seen it.
And it says it's nearly extinct. And
well, that's probably a good reason for that.
Yeah. And that's my other question, because everything goes back to Cabernet Franc for me. Cabernet Franc has a child in Spain, Morena, and that is nearly extinct. And I always say, well, if we know it's nearly extinct, why are we not, we save animals that are nearly extinct, which I'm very, very happy for.
Yep.
Why do we not want to save these grapes? It's got to be something that they're just not good grapes.
Well, no, I mean, that's interesting because over time, there's a reason why these, why Chardonnay is most widely planted, why we have Cabernet, why we have so much Syrah. I mean, it could be many, many reasons as far as like they grow better, or, over time it's just natural selection and these just kind of like fall off. But I mean, there is a movement for a lot of these varieties that are going extinct. It's more of a hipster movement, but a lot of these varieties are coming back, and these more obscure, smaller guys are bringing it back and making wine from them. We've got a guy over on the west side, the Batzoukas family, that are bringing back a lot of the Greek varieties.
Oh, okay, nice.
And now there's quite a few Greek plantings in the area, and they do make some nice wines. So, whether it's natural selection or it's just they don't grow well, they don't do well. Who knows?
Yeah. But Pinot is its other parent. So we always hear Pinot and Chardonnay. They're always kind of in that same conversation. So I think that's a little bit more easier to contemplate. That parent giving something to their offspring. What do you see as similarities between Pinot and Chardonnay?
Well, I think we do that similarity, or we compare them, or they're always next to each other because of Burgundy. I mean, it all goes back to France, doesn't it? No matter what we're talking about, whether it's Bordeaux or Burgundy. Similarities, I mean, if you made a straight Pinot Noir that had no skins contact, no, I wouldn't say they're that similar at all. But I think it's just the Burgundy.
Just the Burgundy thing?
Relationship.
So they belong together because of Burgundy. They belong
together, yeah. Thanks, France. Thanks, Frenchies.
All right, let's talk a little viticulture. So what does Chardonnay...
I just make wine.
You just make wine?
I don't know. Like, what are those called? I don't know.
Green things growing out of the ground.
They look like they're ready to pick. Let's do it.
What does Chardonnay clusters look like? Are they big? Are they small? Are they fat berries? What, general characteristics?
Well, I mean, there's so many different clones, and I think we're going to touch on clones later, but it depends on the clone for sure, but I would say they're medium size. Berries are medium size. They're not necessarily tight clusters, but a little tighter. I mean, especially out in our field, you can see how luscious the canopies are and how green the leaves are. But yeah, medium clusters, kind of tight, but not super tight, not like Petit Syrah or something like that. And then they usually turn out, they've got this golden sort of yellowish color when they're ready to pick, and the skins are typically pretty. I would say they're like on the tougher side, and I think that's one of the reasons it does so well in why it's so widely planted. It's not necessarily bulletproof, because it is certainly susceptible to like mildew and stuff like that, but it's a little more bulletproof than a lot of the other white varieties that we have. I don't know. I actually don't know what the true terminology is, but you know how some of the grapes speckle, the white grapes or green grapes, they speckle as they're past veraison, they're ripening. Do they have the speckles on them? I don't know if there's a real term for that. I mean, a little bit out in our field. Sometimes, I mean, that could be a lot of reasons. Measles cause that. Other diseases cause that. Sunburn can cause that.
Oh.
But typically, I think it's just sun exposure that causes that kind of speckling.
Little tanning.
Little tanning, exactly. Like what I got in Tahiti.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, is this Chardonnay right here?
Yeah, so,
All right.
So on the back side of the vineyard, that's about 5 acres of Viognier. Then we have 9 acres of Chardonnay. The Chardonnay was replanted, 7, 8 years ago. 9 years ago. And the reason we did that was because, so back in the 70s and 80s, we didn't, like Gary didn't care about phylloxera and like some of these other diseases because he's like, Paso's too dry. It's not, we're not going to get any of that stuff. And eventually, we did. And so we had things like dead arm and red blotch and phylloxera kind of got in the vineyard. And so we had to replant. But the only portion of the vineyard that hasn't been replanted yet is the estate Cabernet.
Oh.
Which really hasn't been affected by phylloxera. So
maybe they're afraid of Gary.
Yep.
Him and his Cabernet.
Well, that was when I came here. The first day I arrived. So I came from Australia. I'd been living there for 4 years. Gary hired me while I was living there. And the first day I showed up here, I went and talked to him. And he was sitting outside at his little second office drinking Cabernet. And one of the first things he said to me was, "You can do whatever you want with the wines. Just don't F up the Cabernet." All right. Got it. Message received.
Yeah. And then when they're in the vineyard, you said that they are susceptible to mildew. Is that pretty much, I mean, they, like you said, they're pretty tolerant of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I've got a great viticulturalist, Ryan Newkirk. He's second generation grower. The same family has been farming our vineyard forever.
Oh, wow.
So you have Howie Steinbeck, which Gary's relationship with Howie goes back 50 plus years.
Right.
So, and Gary's the one that got Howie involved in grape growing. And so when Howie planted this vineyard, he's the only one that's worked on it other than Ryan and their team. So, we've got a really great family connection there. And I mean, yeah, so it is susceptible, but it stays typically dry. But if we get a particularly cool growing season, and the humidity comes up, we might see a little bit of powdery or just regular mildew, but they're usually on top of it. They're spraying before any of that stuff usually happens. And again, like we sort pretty heavy at the sorting table, so most of that stuff will come out. Right. So no mildew in my vineyard.
All right. So you're talking about potential cool climate. I think it's a great opportunity. Plus, I've been here a while, so let's talk about that 23 Chardonnay. You said that we have two Chardonnays here. One is your just the Paso Robles Chardonnay, but then you have the Reserve, which isn't done every vintage. So 23 was an interesting vintage here in Paso. Gosh, it was a roller coaster of a ride.
Everyone was, it was. We didn't think things would ripen.
Right.
I mean, it was a cool growing season. We had the coolest June on record. I don't think we broke 90. I think the highest temperature was 88. And, June we need that heat. July was cool. Even during ripening, I think we never hit 100, I don't think.
Wow, yeah.
And I think the highest temperature we saw was maybe 94, 95. So that's pretty unusual for Paso. I mean, shoot, that was the year if you grow Pinot Noir, you might make a really good one. So it was an interesting growing season. But, just seeing that happen and seeing that it was going to be a cool growing season, I was like, okay, we could do something with the Chardonnay. Just seeing how things were developing, I knew we could do something. And so, so the way that we make our Chardonnay, typically with our Eberle Chardonnay, not the Reserve, like I said, we kind of split the line between, I got to try and appease everybody. So we do 1/3 stainless steel fermentation and stainless steel aging. We do 1/3 new oak with malolactic, and we do 1/3 old oak, no malolactic.
Okay.
So we're just like right in the middle of, stylistically what hopefully everyone's going to enjoy. So we do an early pick of Chardonnay, which that's where we have more of that malic acid, And so that's the portion I'll use to put through malolactic fermentation.
Okay.
And that's the portion that we'll see new oak, and then we have a second pick, which is our middle pick, and then that's the portion that will go to the older oak and no malolactic, and then we have the last pick, which is going to be fruitier, a lot more of those tropical fruits, which we'll see only stainless steel. So that's the way that we do it. And then so with the reserve, that usually comes from the first pick, and that sees 40% new French oak with a little bit of German oak. And I don't put it fully through malolactic. I'll probably go through maybe 2/3 to a half. And that's typically what the reserve is made of.
Okay. So tell people, how do you stop malolactic?
There's a couple of different ways, but the easiest way for me is just to, because it's in barrel and I wanted to leave it on lees so I can do batonnage, we'll just hit it with SO2. So that'll stop fermentation. And but another way you can do it is you can bring it up in the tank. You can freeze the tank if you don't want to add any SO2. So yeah, that's the two ways we do it.
Just kill those babies off.
Kill those babies off. Go to sleep. Quietly go to sleep.
And so here in California, there's really two main clones. And as we said earlier, Chardonnay is definitely the most planted white grape variety, and I agree with you. I think it is the most planted grape variety. But Chenin Blanc actually used to be the #1 planted white grape variety here in California, and then Chardonnay just kind of came in and went, get the hell out of here.
Yep.
But there's two main clones that are dealt across the board here, and it comes from either Wente, which is in Livermore, or Paul Masson, which is in Santa Cruz. Are these Eberle clones?
This is Wente clone.
Wente clone.
So this is so the first planting was Wente, and at the time, like back in, so this was planted in '87. I should know that. Yeah.
Late 80s.
Late 80s, and so I should just say late 80s for everything. Almost everything was Wente clone at that time. Probably 80% of what you're planting if you're doing Chardonnay was Wente clone. So and then we replanted, and it's still Wente clone. Okay. And I think that clone, I believe they brought that over in like the late 1800s. Is that right?
Could be.
I could be wrong.
Could be. Yeah, I know it's been here a really long time.
Yeah.
It's been here a really long time.
So they brought that over from, I really enjoy the Wente clone. I like the Dijon clone. I mean, I think that's probably one of the most popular clones in California as well. But Wente clone.
And what about the rootstock? How does Chardonnay really, there's some grape varieties that really specialize or do much better on different rootstocks than others. And then there's some that there's not really that big of a difference of the rootstock, barring what your soil is, just right up, what's the rootstock here? Do we have various rootstocks? Are they the same rootstock? Chardonnay being the neutral grape, does it care?
It's not neutral. It does matter. I mean, rootstock selection is important, and that comes down to obviously the variety, but your soil type, the region you're in, the climate. So it is all about terroir. To be honest, I don't know what our rootstock is.
I don't think most people know.
I mean, there really is there's 3 popular rootstocks that most people use, and I think it's triple 1.5 is pretty popular. But what's funny is I messaged our Ryan, our viticulturalist, on the way here. I was like, dude, it's the Wente clone, right, that we have? Right. And his response was, I can't remember, but I'll check. Oh, shit. So you know what? He's not going to know the rootstock either, or maybe he will. I don't know.
I mean, it has more to. I think that the rootstock has much more to do with just whatever the soil is, what you're trying to survive, right, in that soil, not necessarily the effect that it has on the grape itself, right? I mean,
yes. I mean, it's not going to have that much effect on the flavors, the aromatics, the characteristics that the wine's going to make. It is definitely just more of getting it suited to the soil type and the climate and all that kind of stuff, the terroir. And then, you want to push a decent amount of crop as well. So you don't want to pick a rootstock that's going to give you super low yields, unless you're going for, $100+ bottle of Chardonnay, which, you know, in Paso Robles, I mean, okay, so we have 9 acres of Chardonnay. We probably have one of the largest plantings of Chardonnay in Paso Robles. So, you know, we kind of have to push it a little bit. So, I mean, we probably, on our yields, we probably get anywhere between 3.5 to 5 tons an acre,
Okay.
which is pretty good. And it's not too much, but it's enough. So yeah.
And so we're, like we said, we're looking at the vines. What direction is this?
So the orientation is, you know, it's mostly east-west. It's kind of slants a little bit more to the south, but it's definitely east-west orientation. So you're getting a lot of sunlight on one side. So, you know, we've got a lot of shade on the south-facing side, and then we open up the other side of the canopy. So, you know, we'll do leaf pulling, and we'll kind of like, as the canes are growing or the shoots are growing, we'll kind of, you know, position them up to kind of give them as much light and you know, air movement as possible.
And the climate that is here, you're, like we said, we're burning off right now. We're still kind of cool right now, so the Chardonnay is loving life here. And it obviously, well, not obviously, I don't know Chardonnay very well, but it probably loves more of that cooler concept, right? That's where it all grows, is in more cooler climates. So this marine layer that you're getting, this is beneficial to your Chardonnay?
Yeah, I would think so. So, I mean, typically, as you know, the marine layer kind of burns off between 11 to noon is kind of when it starts to go away. So, and I think that's what makes, especially the east side, so special is sure, we get a lot of heat over here, but like we don't see the sunlight until, you know, 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Right.
And so, no, I think it does like it. But again, like we're playing with the Winte clone. So the Winte clone is from Livermore. You know, they get a lot of heat as well. Right. So I think it's definitely suitable. You know, that clone is suitable for here, and it's used to, you know, getting more heat. So, but yes, I definitely think having a bit of that marine layer definitely adds some complexity and, you know, to our wine for sure.
So what about the ABC Club? Anything but Chardonnay people. What do you say to them?
So, ABC Club, have you tried Chardonnay from South Africa, from Margaret River, from Australia, the Yarra Valley, Mendoza? Yeah, that's bullshit. There's so many different Chardonnays out there that you can, I don't care if you like it or not, you can find something you like. You know, even if you're on a budget, I mean, there's some great Chardonnays from Mendoza that you can pick up for $15.
Yeah.
You know, and they're wonderful. So no, I think the style that you can find a style that you will enjoy. I think the ABC Club is just a cop out. You know?
Good answer.
I don't want to spend the time looking for a good Chardonnay. Of course, it's fun.
Right.
You know, that's the journey. But you know, like with the Reserve Chardonnay, so people who say that I only drink red wine. Well, I say, well, this Reserve Chardonnay is a red wine drinker's white.
Okay.
You know, try it, and most of the time they enjoy it, or at least that's what they tell me.
Like, oh, it is good. No,
Just say, go away. I'm going to pour this out.
As soon as he turns around.
Whatever.
But I think that it's hysterical. Have you ever seen that meme about the ABC Club and then Chablis? Well, I'll have a Chablis.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, it's bullshit.
Yep.
No, your style exists. It's out there. You just got to find it.
Absolutely, and that's part of the fun.
Yes, 100%.
Absolutely.
You may spend a little bit of money, but that's the journey.
And what do you think it is about Chardonnay that makes it so ideal for sparkling? I mean, we have, you know, Champagne, Franciacorta, you know, those all are using Chardonnay. Is there anything that is special about Chardonnay, or is it just those are the grapes that are growing in that region, so they're...
Once again, we're going back to Burgundy and Champagne.
Flaming Burgundy.
Flaming Burgundy and Champagne. No, I think, you know, again, it's the French have been doing it for so long that, you know, they figured out, like, oh, this doesn't work. This works. Well, let's just keep doing that.
Yeah.
But no, I think Chardonnay there's so many different things you can do with Chardonnay that stylistically you can produce whatever you like. If you want to make it more neutral, like for instance for making sparkling, you definitely can. If you want to make it more oaky and have a little more fruit and still make it sparkling, you can do that. So I think it's just one of those varieties that's more diverse than any other variety out there. And so I think
it's a chameleon, right?
Exactly.
It can adapt to what you want it to be.
Yeah, and to get, and for sparkling, you want. I don't make sparkling, so for all those sparkling winemakers if you're listening, don't judge me. But it can be more neutral, and so when you do other fermentations like fermentation in bottle, the secondary fermentation, or the tertiary fermentation, if you do a little bit of malolactic, so you can do malolactic, you can not do malolactic with sparkling, and then when you do fermentation in bottle, you want those yeasty characters to show, that brioche yeasty character, the bready sort of characters, and so you can do that with Chardonnay because you're not going to get, it'll be a little more neutral. You're not going to get all this fruit. So yeah, I think that's why it's more suitable.
Yeah. And then it is used.
Don't judge me, champagne makers.
I think it's just what's there.
Yeah.
This is what we got. Whatever.
Yeah.
It's worked this long.
We're too lazy to replenish.
Yeah. It's worked this long. We're just going to keep it, right? Chardonnay is actually used for several hybrid grapes as one of the parents of hybrid grapes, and these hybrid grapes are really the ones that have been crossed to solve a problem, basically. And I think mostly cold weather, dealing with winters and things like that. But Chardonnay is one of the parents of many of them. Any idea why?
Well, we touched on this earlier, but I think it's one of the most recognized varieties out there. So it makes sense to try and hybridize it. Because when people go to the grocery store, they're not looking for a Petite Manseng or well, I'm trying to think of the other varieties. Like, well, I do a lot of wine judging, and I often get put on the hybrid panel, which I really enjoy actually. And I get put with some of the guys from New York and Minnesota and Missouri, and they're like hybrid experts. And so it's really fun learning from them. But when you go to the grocery store, unless you live in those areas, you don't know those varieties. Right. So Chardonnay is very recognizable. So I think and it's also been around for such a long time that it's probably going to be easier to hybridize, just because it's gone through hundreds and hundreds of years of being around. So
if you think about the survival of the fittest, it's pretty darn fit.
Exactly. Right. So I think that's those two things are probably what keeps it around the hybridized areas. Yeah.
And I don't think we can talk about Chardonnay without the infamous Judgment of Paris and Chateau Montelena. Yeah, you weren't even a thought in the eye.
It wasn't a thought. My mom was still in high school.
Do you think that? Well, first of all, let's go geeky again because I love going geeky. It was brown, right? Do we see the movie? Right? I mean, the big thing was that it was brown and they thought it was not good, and then that brown went away and they entered
the pinking phenomenon.
Pinking, browning,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
What is that, and what happened there, and how did it go away?
So you don't really see it that often nowadays because obviously we have products we use as the when we crush it in its juice, we add certain products that kind of help it so that doesn't develop. And pinking wasn't really understood back then. It was just this phenomenon that just kind of happened. And I remember in the movie, he took I think Chris Pine's character took the wine to one of the professors at UC Davis, and I think his response was like, yeah, bro, don't worry about that. It'll go away. And then he runs to the airport and gives them all this wine. And by the time the wine gets there, it's not pink anymore or brown or whatever. So yeah, I don't see it very often. So it usually happens when a white variety, doesn't get enough oxygen, and so you're typically working under very reductive conditions, and that can cause pinking. I can't remember all the exact chemistry of how it goes down, but
is it related? It's related to the mallard, right? Which is the browning on toast or something. Or am I completely wrong with that? Or we're just going to skip over that?
Idea. I know how to get rid of it. You use
That's the important thing.
PVPP. So this is a fining agent that we often use as juice. I don't use PVPP as much anymore. I use more Well, because there's a huge movement for going vegan and vegetarian and all this bullshit. But we use potato protein, and that usually can help with pinking. But I mean, especially with Chardonnay, there's the different styles that you do can prevent pinking. So if you do a more oxidative style, then that's not going to
see it, right?
Yeah, and I've only seen it with in tank maybe twice, and it was always Sauvignon Blanc.
Oh,
because most people always work very reductively with Sauvignon Blanc, because you want to retain all those fresh fruits and thiols and that kind of stuff. So you work reductive, but you have to use certain fining products to avoid pinking under reductive conditions.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Exploring the Wine Glass is brought to you by Dracaena Wines. Dracaena Wines is an artisan winery located in Paso Robles, California. They have been producing wine since 2013. Their first vintage began with one wine, their classic Cabernet Franc, which received a 91 in Wine Enthusiast. Since then, they have increased production as well as expanded their portfolio, have received many accolades including multiple double gold medals and consistent 90+ ratings. Visit their website www.dracaenawines.com or use the link in the show notes to schedule a private tasting and to see their entire portfolio. Purchase your award-winning wine and let Dracaena Wines help turn your moments into great memories. So how did it change in bottle already then? Like how did it turn if it was in bottle already?
So most likely what I think is, so it was, they likely, which I doubt back then they were working very reductively, but somehow, they did or they were. And then, it went pink in bottle, but when you bottle, you introduce a lot of oxygen to the wine. So it's just going to take a little bit of time for that oxygen to kind of saturate into the wine. And then aging.
Oh, that is right.
Aging
he did just bottle it. He did just bottle it. That's an important part that I missed. Yeah, he did just bottle it.
Right. So you get a flush of oxygen. And back then, bottling probably wasn't as
efficient
and how we have it today, where we don't introduce any. The bottle is sparged. The wine is sparged, like it's all under reductive conditions, so it's not going to happen. Back then, I'm guessing we didn't really have those kinds of things, other than maybe sparge in the bottle. So it got a flush of oxygen, I imagine, and then with a little bit of time in bottle, it saturated, and then pinking was gone. Yeah.
And do you think that after that movie, or not after that movie, after The Judgment, this is when vines started getting ripped up and everything got converted to Chardonnay. So do you think that was a positive or a negative? You can't talk about our beloved Merlot, right, without the sideways effect, which is a whole different reason why that occurred. But because this one wine won this major, prize, everybody like Chardonnay. So is that a positive thing or a negative?
Well, if you love Chardonnay, it's certainly a positive.
Right, if you love Pinot, Sideways was great.
Well, no, I don't think it matters whether it was Chardonnay or some other variety. I think it just brought a lot of attention to the industry. So I think that's what's important. So not necessarily whether it's Chardonnay or anything else. Yes, it grew in popularity massively and brought a lot of attention, but more to the industry as a whole, which was great. I'm sure wine sales went up and people were happy, and Ron Bauer was buying jets.
That is where that Chenin Blanc started. That was one of the vines that was destroyed by the Judgment of Paris.
Great.
Which is Gary cracks me up. His comment of Chenin Blanc in Paso.
Yeah.
He has a very strong opinion that
he grew every. So I'm sure he told his whole story on the previous podcast. But when he started Estrella Winery, which is just down the road from Eberle, he planted every single variety he could to see what would work here, and there was a lot of failures. Like Pinot Noir didn't do well here. Riesling didn't do well here. and Chenin Blanc was one of those things that he didn't think did well. And what he attributed that to was, for some reason, maybe it was the clone, but with Chenin Blanc, the stomatas wouldn't close. So that's what facilitates respiration. And so if you've got the stomatas are always open and it's always respiring, then you're just constantly feeding it water. And he couldn't give it enough water, and in the vines, he's giving it tons of water and the vines are dying. He's like, what's going on here? So from then on, he was like, okay, Chenin Blanc, you're out of here. And that was during the white wine revolution. And so, I mean, people were doing everything. Chenin Blanc, white Zin, white Cabernet, white Syrah, like white everything. But yeah, Chenin Blanc was not one of the things that survived.
Yeah. And I have to agree with him. And I know we have people here in Paso who make Chenin, and more power to them. Our Chenin doesn't come from here.
Yeah.
It's just, again, I think there's 3 strikes here in Paso, right? We don't have the right soil. We don't have the right climate in the majority of the places. And I don't think we have enough. I mean, the best vines are along the Loire River, right?
Yeah.
Growing all up against the Loire River. Where's our river?
We don't have water. We don't have water. If you want water, you got to go 800 feet deep.
Right.
And even then, you probably have to go deeper.
All right.
And most of the producers who make Chenin, it comes from cooler climates. It comes from, Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, places like that. So, it just doesn't. But it's funny because, in South Africa, Chenin Blanc is one of the main white varieties. Right. It's hot there, but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, something works because it is damn fine.
Maybe
there.
It's the clone. Maybe it's, I don't know.
Yeah. It's really good there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I couldn't say the same for Pinot Noir.
Yeah. But again, I have had 1, 2 really good ones.
No, I agree.
There are some good ones out there.
They exist. What was funny is when I went to go work in South Africa in 10. Man, it's been a long time. And Hartenberg, the estate that I worked at, beautiful place, great wines. They tore out all their Pinotage.
Oh.
They're like, we're done with this. But apparently, from what Carl, the winemaker, or over there, the cellar master is the head guy. So Carl, the cellar master, said, there's a virus that only affects Pinotage, and we're just done with it. So I didn't even get to work with it. I got to try a lot of Pinotage, but didn't get to work with it.
Now, in all of these places that you did work, was Chardonnay there?
You can't get away from Chardonnay. Can't go anywhere with that. No, I don't mind that because I actually really enjoy Chardonnay. But actually, I don't remember working with it in Germany. I definitely didn't work with it in Bordeaux. Okay. But South Africa, yes. New Zealand, only a small amount. That was mostly Sauv Blanc.
Sauv Blanc, right.
And definitely Margaret River, Western Australia. They really produce some of the best Chardonnays that I've ever tasted. And then, I worked in Sonoma, which a lot of Chardonnay there, which I love. I mean, if you want that, weighty, a little bit oaky, a little bit buttery, but still has that kind of leanness. I mean, Sonoma Russian River Chardonnays are amazing.
Do you think that the Chardonnay,
shout out Dumont.
the Chardonnay that you worked with, like in Australia, New Zealand, can you, I know the terroir and all of that, but if you were blind tasting and you judge all the time, would you be able to tell a Chardonnay from there versus a Chardonnay from here?
From Paso?
California, let's say, because...
I don't know. Yeah, no, I think if you're comparing different countries, I will give myself 80%. I could probably, maybe not pick out the country, but I can say where it's not from.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I could. I think...
So 2 glasses, one is always California, one is another country.
Yes, I would... Oh, frick, that's hard, actually.
I want to do that. We should do that.
Okay, I'm in. Are you buying?
Yeah, I'll buy. That'll be awesome.
But, you have Santa Barbara, you've got Santa Ynez area, you got all that, and then you've got Anderson Valley, which produced really beautiful more lean Chardonnays that you can even say are more like Chablis style.
Right.
So we kind of run the gambit. So shoot, maybe it would be kind of hard. I'd like to say I'd still get it 80% correct if it was, okay, is this California or is this somewhere else?
Right.
Yeah, I could do that.
think it would be fun.
I
think that would be a fun experiment.
Yeah,
I think we should do that.
Okay. If we include Gary, maybe he'll buy it all.
All right. We'll talk to Gary later.
Okay.
All right.
He should be at around 11 to start his first bottle of Viognier.
So, being that there's so many different styles of Chardonnay, it does make it a great wine for food.
Yes.
Right? So what are some of your favorite pairings for Chardonnay? And then how are you determining what food, you got that butter bomb, that's going to be a very different food than a Chablis style Chardonnay. So what are some of your favorite pairings, and are there some rules or semi,
I don't know if there's rules so much. I mean, you're not going to do like red meats, with Chardonnay. I would, stay in the ocean, stay seafood. If you got a big buttery Chardonnay, like crab cakes and like any, like with some kind of buttery beurre blanc sauce. And then if you're going to go more Chablis style or something like that, I'd say oysters and some lean fish. And if you want, a little, and then buttery, if you're going to go fish, you got to go salmon, with some buttery potatoes underneath. But I mean, rules.
So butter and butter?
Yeah, butter. Butter bomb, butter. I don't think there's any real rules. I mean, it's kind of, it's pretty easy. Like, am I going to have a buttery Chardonnay with the New York? No, probably not. But I'd say stay seafood. Seafood. I think that's pretty safe with any white wine.
Mm-hmm. When I love Chardonnay the best?
By itself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah. Same.
When
But I could say that about almost any wine.
Well, that is true too. But Chardonnay is one of my favorite go-tos when it's the first wine of the day.
Yeah.
Or usually if we're doing multiple wines by the day, like Super Bowl, you're talking four wines throughout that day, right?
Yeah.
I start off with a sparkling, and then we go to the white, then we go to the red, and then I'm usually having like a Sauterne or something to end the evening.
Where's my invite for a Super Bowl? Jesus.
Anytime.
Sparkling white, another white. What is it, red and a Sauternes? Jesus.
Yeah.
Are you pairing food with all this?
Usually at that second white, then the little appetizers come out.
The wedge?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Okay.
And then some stupid, Super Bowl food for that red, But I love Chardonnay. Like, if we're going to have a dinner and, Mike, my husband, does all of the cooking,
nice.
That's my favorite time for Chardonnay, man. You cook.
I'll sit here,
watch you cook. That's all good. We'll have a nice conversation, and before
did you get 2 glasses?
Yeah.
No? Oh, shit. I'm sorry. The bottle's gone.
All right.
Yeah, I do that.
Yeah. That's kind of one of my favorite pairings, is just sitting down. It's conversation and,
Yeah, but that's the thing with Chardonnay, because typically it's got that weight, and it's nice on the palate, and it's still refreshing, and it's got character, and so it's, definitely, I love drinking it just by itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we try some wine?
Yes.
All right.
And
California certified California sustainable vineyard.
Hey, when did that officially come in?
I have no idea.
It's been this way for a while?
It's been like 3 years.
Oh, all right.
So this is our Chardonnay. This is our everyday Chardonnay. This retails for about, I should know this. I want to say 32.
Okay.
100% estate. This was bottled in middle March. So still pretty fresh. The reserve that we're going to have was only bottled 2 weeks ago.
Oh,
so
I
opened it before you got here, just to kind of open it up a little bit and see, let it breathe a little bit.
And we have the screw cap versus the cork.
Screw cap versus cork. I mean, if you're going to have reserve on the bottle, at least in California, it probably should be cork.
Yeah.
If it was up to me, everything would be in screw cap, even our reds, which our Vineyard Selection Cabernet, which is our entry-level cab, is in screw cap, and then our full bore red, which is our table wine, is also in screw cap. the wines just stay fresher so much longer than any other closure out there.
But what's your thought of the wines that you are bottling although again, I think, what is it? The average consumer is drinking the wine 72 hours?
It's like, 72 hours when they buy it off the shelf or at the taste room.
But what about the 8 lying down? I get it. Screw caps, keep it fresh, right? People say, oh, it's just as if you bottled it or whatever. But one of the things I love about like Bordeaux wines is tasting them as they progress and they're aging, and you're seeing that, primary into the secondary and then into that early tertiary. That aging is something I look forward to. What's that?
Your wine's still going to age when it's in screw cap. There's still a small amount of oxygen that's being introduced, but I don't love drinking old wines. I love it a little fresher. I love wines, especially reds, around the 4 to 7 year mark, somewhere in there. I think that's the optimal time, especially in California, because stylistically, like we're talking about, most wines are consumed within the first 72 hours. So you got to keep that in mind as a winemaker when you're making the wines. Like, you're not going to make this wine to age for 20, 30 years because it's going to be a little undrinkable in the first few years. And that's the way that Gary, back in the 70s and the 80s and even into the 90s, and stylistically things changed in the mid to late 90s. But he made wines to age. So all he knew, out of graduating from Davis and coming down to Paso, his first vintage was opening a winery. He built a winery. He never, he made wine at UC Davis, but in a facility like that, never. So like, he's reading textbooks, and most of those textbooks were, a lot of them were written by UC Davis professors, but a lot of it was Bordeaux centric. So you're making wines to age. Back then, alcohols were 12 to, tops 13.5% for Cabernet. You don't see that anymore. Now. The only time you see that is maybe, Bordeaux. That's the, and even then, most of the Bordeaux's are, they're up in the 14s. But when you do see it, it is still Bordeaux. But we don't make wines to age. I do make, like any of our reserves. Yes, I'll make them to age. They're going to be more tannic. They're going to be lower alcohol, typically. And you can lay those down for a while, but you got to keep, our job is to sell wine, so we got to make it drinkable. But if you want those ageable wines, you got to go Bordeaux. There's still some Napa producers making some great ageable wines, like Freemark Abbey. I was just there. I guess a year ago now, but beautiful wines that are definitely ageable.
Right. So I can definitely tell what you're talking about. There is that hint of butter in here, but by no means in that butter bomb realm.
So you got your hints of oak, you got your hints of butter, but for me it's more like maybe hazelnuts or...
Yeah, I was going to say it's butter, but it's more in the nut, in that nut realm. Yeah. So.
And you still got your fruits. So, typically any Chardonnay, I'm trying to think of another Paso producer of Chardonnay, and the only one I can think of is who makes a Paso grown Chardonnay would be Adelaida. I think they still have the Hoffman Ranch. I think it's Hoffman Ranch Chardonnay. So there might just be two of us that are producing pure Paso Chardonnay. But with Paso Chard, and I think Robert Hall. I think they make a...
I think so,
Yep. Because I was talking about this with Amanda, like the Paso Chardonnay can be, if you overcrop it, it can be so neutral. So you really have to watch the crop and really get it. You got to push it a little bit to get those fruit characteristics. And so what I get from most of our Paso Chardonnay and our Eberle Chard, our estate, pineapple, hazelnuts, a little bit of butteriness, a little bit of oak, but definitely more of that tropical sort of realm.
And does that tropicalness, do you aid that along with your yeast selection?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
100%. Yeast selection is so important, especially when working with Chardonnay. What yeast do we work with?
I don't know. Gary was saying that you have a very large refrigerator full of yeast selections.
Yeah, he's very jealous of my Chardonnay selections. Back then I think they had like 8. Nowadays we got like 800. No, it's probably more in the 200. It's definitely over 100 for sure, but there's a lot.
Okay.
And, Lafort's, all these manufacturers of yeast, Lafort's got like 50. Scott Labs has 100. And all these other labs have so many different yeasts you can choose from. So it is important. It's a little daunting to have that.
I was gonna say, how do you choose them? Trial and error, vintage after vintage. Okay, I tried this because I've heard about this, and then I'm looking more for a little bit than this, and then can you go to a yeast master and say, well, you know what? This yeast gave me this, but I'm looking for a little bit more into this realm.
Absolutely, like Marcy from Lafort. I talk to her. All my reps I'll talk to before harvest, before choosing my yeast. But by now, this is my 9th vintage at Eberle, so I've got kind of things under
Your
control.
favorites.
My favorites. I kind of know what to choose. But coming here, I kind of knew what yeast I wanted to work with, just because based on other places I've worked and what's worked over there. But then again, you're coming to a new area, different terroir, different soils, different clone, different climate, different everything, different facility. I mean, that has a lot to do with it too. So it was trial and error for a little bit, and trial and error for like 4 years, and then every vintage you find something that's like, yes, I love that one, and then you just kind of keep building on that. And so by now I use, I think, 3 or 4 different yeasts for Chardonnay, and it all depends on, okay, is it going to barrel? That'll get a certain type of yeast. Is it going to get oak? Is it going to go through malolactic? Mm-hmm. It's got to be compatible. And then tank is something different as well. So yeast selection is very important. I can't remember what yeast I use, but
it's all in the refrigerator. You don't need to. Yeah,
it's in the book. I know.
Yeah. One of the biggest things I ever learned, which is so stupid, but my 8th grade science teacher, earth science, would say there's 2 types of knowledge. There's knowledge that you need to actually know, and there's knowledge that you need to know where to go to get the answer.
Boom, exactly.
And that is it, right? You're taking notes, right? You have your notes probably from every vintage
I do.
Right?
I do.
And so you can go back and go, what was that yeast? You know what? There's only so many brain cells. I'm not going to remember that, but...
Yes, I have records on everything, every fermentation. So I've got every yeast that I've used. Everything's in there. So, but what really sucks is, I'll have a fermentation, especially toward the end of harvest. You tend to get not so much lazy, but tired.
Right.
And so sometimes you don't write everything down. But I'll go back and man, that yeast was awesome. I love that. This has made a really great wine. And you go back in the records and I didn't write down the yeast.
Oh.
But no, all the records are there, and I've got a spreadsheet that shows everything that I use.
Winemakers and spreadsheets.
Yeah, exactly.
They are hand in hand.
Yeah.
All right, let's pour the Reserve so I want to compare colors and then compare taste.
So biggest difference between these two is the Reserve gets more oak, more new oak, and more malolactic secondary fermentation.
Oh, okay.
So for me, I mean, the Reserve was aged a little bit longer as well. You definitely get more of a darker yellow.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But also I think maybe a little more green tint on the Reserve.
Yeah, because I'm holding it up against the notebook here, and that golden green color goes all the way through, where the every day it becomes a little bit more transparent as it goes up, so that you seeing what I'm talking about? Yeah. Oh, there's a big difference.
Yeah. Actually, what's great, especially since I haven't tried this since we bottled, 3 or 4 weeks ago, is that I'm pleasantly surprised the way it's turning out. Now that's always good because sometimes and definitely wine and bottle it will change over
Absolutely.
time, and oftentimes there'll be a stage where you're like, it's going through a phase. It's going through a little funk phase.
Going through a funk phase.
I don't like it right now, but I'm happy to say this is smelling and tasting pretty nice.
Yeah. And I believe anybody who says that bottle shock doesn't happen is, I don't think it happens all the time.
Yeah.
But I do definitely think there is something. It's like a marriage, right? You're putting everything into this bottle.
Yeah.
And who's leaving who's leaving the cap off the toothpaste thing? Who's got going on with that marriage takes a little time for them to come together.
Well, when you think about it, so I would say nowadays most people do filter their wines. Mm-hmm. So these wines are filtered. And what you're doing is you're separating all the molecules. Like everything's separating and then coming back together once they get into bottles. So there's going to be a time where it's just like it's going through a phase. Yeah. So, and I think that's what's really fun about tasting wines and letting them sit down is seeing that process. So I mean, that's the most fun for me about tasting wines as they age.
So I am getting less of that hazelnut in the reserve.
Yeah, I get more of the oak.
Yeah, and there's more of depending on what month it is, they hate this word, more of a minerality though. Like,
I don't mind it. So if you think about it, this was the first pick of Chardonnay.
Okay.
So on the bottle it says 14.5, but actually the alcohol is 13.8. So definitely lower. But an earlier pick, you're going to get more of that minerality lean in your wine. Yeah.
And it is a leaner. It absolutely is. There's more of a burst of flavor on the everyday as soon as it goes on your palate, and then it kind of dissipates as the finish goes away. Where the reserve, when you put it on your palate, it's not that burst instantaneously, but it's more. It evolves more on the as you allow it to be on your palate. Yeah, absolutely a difference. And approximate, what's the cost of the reserve?
So our normal Chardonnay, I should really have a better word for it. Everyday or normal Chardonnay. It's very good. It's $32.
Every day is not bad. Every day is not bad. No.
Okay.
It is. It's like a house wine, right? I come home and I just want a good glass of wine that I know isn't going to break the bank, but is going to be good in my glass every time, right?
Yep.
So it is an everyday.
So that's 32 retail, in the reserve I think it's 50.
Oh, okay. Not bad.
Not for around here. I mean, we're getting up there in some white wine prices for
Absolutely.
sure.
Absolutely.
No, but this definitely sees the treatment. It was aged for 8 months in barrel. 50% new oak between French and German oak, and then lots of batonnage, just a lot of lees stirring, building texture, more malolactic. So a lot of love goes into making this wine and effort for sure.
So the batonnage, are you doing it the same for both, or is there more batonnage?
So more in our reserve. The oaked portion of this gets batonnage, and the wine aged in older French gets lees stirring, but not. So this would be about like twice a week. We'll stir the lees. This would see at least 3 times a week.
Okay, so you're waking those babies up.
Oh yeah, come on,
Getting to work. Getting them up there. All right, awesome. Well, is there anything that I forgot to ask or you think is important about Chardonnay first, and then about Eberle?
Drink it. Chardonnays. Don't be an ABCer. Don't do that. No, but I love Chardonnay. My wife loves Chardonnay. She's from Margaret River. It's a Chardonnay growing region. It's one of our favorite wines to drink together.
How does she feel about the Chardonnay here versus there?
California versus she's
homegirl.
Yeah. She's that every time. She does, at least she says she likes my Chardonnay. But no, I mean, it's an adventure trying to find what you like. And with Chardonnay, it's grown just about everywhere. You can find your region, you can find your style, and you know, and you can find all that at almost any price point.
Right.
So, and I think that's what's really fun about Chardonnay is it's a bit of an adventure finding what you like. About Eberle, we're probably the only winery, let me think, in the world that doesn't charge for wine tasting. But we have such a rich history here. Of course, we have Gary Eberle, and we make fantastic wines. And
who's not out there yet? And it's
I know,
past
what time is
11
it?
o'clock. It's quarter after 11.
Starting late.
But it's a little cooler today. Maybe he's
It's a little cooler.
inside.
Yeah, and he's always in shorts, so you know it's. But no, and stylistically, my approach to wine is, you know, I'm just trying to achieve balance in everything. So in my style, you know, we're trying to achieve balance, but I'm trying to make a wine that's not necessarily Paso Robles. It's you know, I'm trying to bring down the alcohols a little bit. And I'm trying to split the gap between, you know, new and old world kind of winemaking. So yeah, come see us.
Yeah, and very easy to get here, right on 46
Right off the
East.
46, you know, if you're coming from Bakersfield or if you're coming from the east on the 46, we're, 5 miles from the 101? On the right-hand side, if you're leaving Paso, 3 or 5 miles leaving Paso on the left. Can't miss it.
Just be careful crossing 46.
Just be careful crossing 46. We've got wine caves. You get a free
biggest.
tour.
Biggest wine caves and first
in Paso,
Right.
second in California. I believe the first one was Pine up in Napa.
Oh, okay.
And free tour, free tasting. We're not trying to bribe you to buy our wines. You will buy a bottle.
Or a few.
Or a few.
Well, thank you so much.
Cheers.
I'll raise a glass. Slancha.
Was no brandy, that was no martini.
This has been another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. Thanks for listening. If you have suggestions on what topics you would like me to discuss, please reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Exploring the Wine Glass. I am also on LinkedIn as Lori Hoyt-Budd. Of course, you can always email me at exploringthewineglass@gmail.com and sign up for my newsletter at exploringthewineglass.com. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find me more easily. And most importantly, tell your wine-loving friends, because if you like the podcast, they will too. Podcast music is Wine by Kevins. Until next week, Slancha.
There is always time for a good glass of wine. I want a nice glass right now.